Every hero's journey begins somewhere. For Ahsoka Tano, that journey began on the grasslands of Shili, a planet where the red soil meets the white-striped montrals of her Togruta people. Born in 36 BBY to Pav-ti and Nak-il Tano, Ahsoka's destiny would take her far beyond the hunting grounds of her ancestors. The galaxy was a different place then. The Republic stood strong, the Jedi Order flourished, and the storm clouds of war remained distant on the horizon. But even in these peaceful times, the Force was already working its will through a small Togruta girl with remarkable courage. As a toddler, Ahsoka showed signs that she wasn't like other children. Her mother took her on a journey across Shili's plains, teaching her about the delicate balance between life and death. Most children would cling to their parents in fear, but young Ahsoka approached a massive rakshir feline without a trace of fear, climbing onto its back while the adults watched in astonishment. The tribal elder Gantika noticed something special in the child that day, a connection to something greater than herself. But the Force that blessed Ahsoka with such gifts also placed her in danger. At just 3 years old, her life took its first dramatic turn when an imposter claiming to be a Jedi attempted to take her from her village, not for training, but for slavery. The terrified child faced her first brush with the galaxy's darker side before she could even understand what was happening. Fate intervened in the form of Jedi Master Plo Koon. With his distinctive Keldor breathing mask and calm demeanor, he arrived on Shili seeking Force-sensitive children. What he found was a frightened Togruta girl who, despite her recent trauma, instantly trusted him. Little Soka, he called her, the nickname becoming a lifeline in a moment of fear. Master Plo taught the young girl breathing techniques to calm herself, the first lesson in what would become a lifetime of Jedi training. Their bond would endure through the years, a foundation of trust that shaped Ahsoka's understanding of what it meant to be a Jedi. The gleaming spires of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant couldn't have been more different from the open skies of Shili. Brought to this hub of galactic civilization, Ahsoka joined thousands of other younglings in the structured life of Jedi training. The trauma of the false Jedi faded as she found her place among the stars, growing in confidence and skill. The Jedi Temple became the only home she knew. Mornings spent in meditation, afternoons in combat training, evenings studying the wisdom of those who came before. The rhythms of Jedi life replaced the rhythms of Shili, and Ahsoka thrived in this environment of discipline and learning. As all Jedi younglings must, Ahsoka eventually journeyed to the crystal caves of Ilum. In those frozen caverns, each Jedi-to-be faces not just the challenge of finding a kyber crystal, but the challenge of finding themselves. Ahsoka struggled at first, wandering the icy passages with growing frustration. The crystal wouldn't reveal itself until she remembered Master Yoda's teachings about patience and intuition. "You will know your crystal when you find it," the ancient master had told her. Calming her mind, releasing her anxiety, Ahsoka followed not her eyes but her feelings. The crystal called to her, a perfect match for her spirit, waiting in a place she had overlooked before. With crystal in hand, Ahsoka's next challenge awaited aboard the Crucible, the ancient Jedi vessel where generations of younglings had constructed their first lightsabers. Under the watchful photoreceptors of Huyang, the ancient architect droid who had guided Jedi for 1,000 years, Ahsoka assembled her weapon. Between corrections and adjustments, the droid shared stories of the Jedi who came before, weaving lessons about the galaxy's history into the practical work of lightsaber construction. When Ahsoka finally ignited her completed lightsaber, the green blade humming to life in her hands, it marked her transition from youngling to the next phase of Jedi training. But the galaxy had other plans for the traditional path she might have taken. The Clone Wars erupted with the Battle of Geonosis, changing everything. The peaceful keepers of justice were thrust into roles as generals, and the need for Jedi in the field accelerated the training of many Padawans. At 14, years earlier than tradition would normally allow, Ahsoka found herself assigned to one of the Order's most unorthodox knights. Master Yoda saw potential in this pairing that others might have missed. Anakin Skywalker, powerful but emotionally attached, might learn balance from teaching a Padawan. And Ahsoka, eager but inexperienced, might benefit from a master who understood what it meant to come to the Jedi later in life. Their first meeting on Christophsis wasn't exactly the stuff of legend. In the middle of a battlefield, with separatist forces closing in, Ahsoka arrived with a message from Master Yoda. What she didn't bring was the reinforcements Anakin and Obi-Wan desperately needed. "You're stuck with me, Sky Guy," she told a shocked Anakin, her confidence masking her nervousness. The nickname slipped out before she could stop herself, a glimpse of the spirited personality behind the Padawan braid. "What did you just call me?" Anakin responded, before dubbing her Snips for her snippy attitude. Neither could have known then how important they would become to each other, how their paths would intertwine through some of the galaxy's darkest hours. Their relationship started rocky. Anakin hadn't asked for a Padawan and wasn't sure he wanted the responsibility. Ahsoka was eager to prove herself, but had much to learn about patience and strategy. It was the beginning of a partnership that would shape both their destinies, forged in the fires of a war that would transform the galaxy. For Ahsoka Tano, raised in the Jedi Temple but truly educated on the battlefield, the real journey was just beginning. The youngling from Shili was taking her first steps into a larger world, one where the clear teachings of the Jedi would be tested against the messy reality of a galaxy at war. The Clone Wars threw Ahsoka Tano into the deep end from day one. Her arrival on Christophsis wasn't just her first meeting with Anakin Skywalker, it was her introduction to the brutal reality of galactic warfare. The Separatist army had deployed a massive energy shield that made Republic artillery useless, and time was running out for the trapped clone forces. While Anakin and Obi-Wan debated strategy, the young Padawan suggested something bold. Instead of attacking the shield head-on, why not sneak behind enemy lines? It was risky, perhaps even foolhardy, but it showed the kind of thinking that would come to define her approach to problems. Together with her new master, Ahsoka infiltrated enemy territory, using stealth and quick thinking to disable the shield generator. When the shield fell and Republic forces broke through, it marked her first victory in what would become a long line of battlefield successes. The dust had barely settled on Christophsis when Ahsoka and Anakin received urgent new orders that would test their fledgling partnership. Jabba the Hutt's son, Rotta, had been kidnapped, and securing his safe return was suddenly the Republic's top priority. Not for humanitarian reasons, of course. The Republic needed access to Hutt-controlled hyperspace lanes to maintain their war effort, and Jabba was willing to grant that access in exchange for his son's rescue. The mission took them to Teth, where Separatist forces held the Huttlet in an ancient monastery perched atop a sheer cliff face. The vertical assault tested not just Ahsoka's combat skills, but her endurance. Fighting alongside clone troopers of the 501st Legion, she began forming bonds that would last throughout the war, especially with the veteran Captain Rex. His initial skepticism of the young commander quickly gave way to respect as she proved herself in battle. Inside the monastery, Ahsoka faced something far more dangerous than battle droids. When Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku's deadly assassin, arrived to ensure the mission's failure, Ahsoka found herself in her first lightsaber duel against a trained dark side user. The fight was brief but intense, revealing just how much she still had to learn about lightsaber combat. But more importantly, it showed her courage. Despite being outmatched, she stood her ground, buying time for Anakin to escape with the Huttlet. As the war spread across the galaxy, Ahsoka found herself drawn into the hunt for one of the Separatists' most terrifying weapons. The Malevolence, a massive warship commanded by General Grievous, was systematically destroying Republic fleets with its ion cannon, leaving disabled ships and dying clones in its wake. The campaign to stop this juggernaut became personal for Ahsoka when Master Plo Koon's fleet fell victim to the weapon. While the Jedi Council declared Koon and his men lost, Ahsoka refused to accept it. Her close bond with the Jedi who had discovered her as a child gave her a connection the others lacked. She sensed that Plo Koon was still alive, and she convinced a reluctant Anakin to search for survivors despite their orders. Her intuition proved correct, and they rescued the Jedi Master and several clone troopers from the freezing void of space. Later in the campaign, when the Republic launched a desperate attack on the Malevolence, Ahsoka served as Skywalker's gunner in Shadow Squadron. Their mission was to target the bridge and kill General Grievous, but the casualties were mounting quickly. It was Ahsoka who recognized the flaw in the plan and persuaded Anakin to target the ion cannon instead. The last-minute change in strategy saved most of their squadron and crippled the Separatist weapon, showing that sometimes victory comes not from raw power, but from wisdom. As her skills grew, Ahsoka was entrusted with more responsibility. When the Separatist leader Newt Gunray was captured, she was assigned to help Jedi Master Luminara Unduli guard the prisoner during transport to Coruscant. It should have been a routine mission, but the Separatists weren't about to let such a high-value prisoner go without a fight. Asajj Ventress led a boarding party to free the Viceroy, forcing Ahsoka into another confrontation with the assassin. This time, their duel was no brief skirmish. Ventress's twin red lightsabers clashed against Ahsoka's green blade throughout the ship's corridors. Though Ahsoka was eventually trapped in a ray shield, she managed to break free in time to save Master Unduli from what would have been a fatal strike. Gunray escaped in the chaos, but the experience taught Ahsoka valuable lessons about facing superior opponents. Not all of Ahsoka's wartime education came on the battlefield. Under the mentorship of Senator Padme Amidala, she began to see beyond the binary narrative of Republic versus Separatist. A covert mission to Raxus, heart of the Separatist government, opened her eyes to the complexity of galactic politics. There, she met Separatist Senator Mina Bonteri and her son Lux, discovering that the enemy wasn't a faceless evil, but people with their own genuine grievances against the Republic. This nuanced understanding extended to her work with Duchess Satine of Mandalore. When corruption threatened the neutral system's stability, Ahsoka helped expose the truth, learning that maintaining peace often required as much courage as fighting on the front lines. These diplomatic missions showed her that a Jedi's role went beyond wielding a lightsaber. It meant standing for truth and justice in all its forms. Perhaps her most difficult lesson came during the liberation of Ryloth. Given command of her own fighter squadron, Ahsoka was eager to prove herself as a leader, but her overconfidence led to disaster when separatist forces ambushed her squad, resulting in the loss of every pilot under her command. The weight of those deaths nearly crushed her spirit, but with Anakin's guidance, she found the strength to get back in the cockpit. Her redemption came when she helped break the separatist blockade, allowing Republic forces to land and free the Twi'lek people from separatist occupation. The victory was bittersweet, tempered by the knowledge of what it had cost. But the experience shaped her approach to leadership, instilling a sense of responsibility that would define her command style throughout the war. As Ahsoka accumulated battle experience, her combat skills evolved dramatically. She began to adapt her master's aggressive variant of Form 5 lightsaber combat, adding her own acrobatic flair that utilized her natural Togruta agility. Eventually, she adopted the dual-wielding Jarkai style, adding a shorter Shoto lightsaber to complement her main blade. This unconventional approach mirrored her growing confidence as a warrior. By the end of her first year as a Padawan, the transformation was remarkable. The inexperienced girl who had arrived on Christophsis could now hold her ground against the likes of General Grievous, one of the most feared duelists in the galaxy. While she wasn't yet a match for the cyborg general's 4 lightsaber assault, the fact that she survived such encounters spoke volumes about how far she had come. Through victories and setbacks, diplomatic missions and pitched battles, Ahsoka was forging her identity not just as Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, but as a Jedi in her own right. The Clone Wars had become her training ground, a crucible that was burning away her youthful naivety and tempering her spirit into something stronger. But the greatest tests of her resolve were still to come. As the Clone Wars intensified, Ahsoka Tano faced challenges that tested her not just as a Jedi, but as a person. These trials forged her identity in ways that traditional Jedi training never could, pushing her beyond the boundaries of what she thought possible. One of the most mysterious experiences came when Ahsoka, Anakin, and Obi-Wan intercepted a strange distress signal in the Crilithium system. Following it led them to a monolith floating in space that transported their ship to Mortis, a realm existing outside normal time and space. This ethereal world was home to 3 beings who embodied different aspects of the Force: the Father, the Daughter, and the Son. On Mortis, Ahsoka encountered something no Jedi training could prepare her for: a vision of her older self. This apparition warned her about her attachment to Anakin, claiming it would lead to terrible consequences. Before Ahsoka could fully process this warning, the Son, who embodied the dark side, seized and corrupted her. Under his influence, Ahsoka turned against her master. Her eyes yellowed with dark side energy as she fought Anakin with uncharacteristic ferocity. The Son eventually drained her life force, killing her. In a moment of sacrifice that echoed throughout the Force, the Daughter transferred her remaining life energy to Ahsoka through Anakin, bringing the Padawan back to life purged of darkness. When they finally left Mortis, neither Ahsoka nor her companions retained clear memories of what happened there. But the experience changed her on a fundamental level, giving her a glimpse into the true nature of the Force that few Jedi ever receive. Not long after this mystical ordeal, Ahsoka faced a much more physical challenge, when a Trandoshan hunting party captured her during a battle on Felucia. She awoke disoriented and weaponless on Huascar, a jungle moon where the reptilian hunters considered Jedi the ultimate prey in their twisted sport. On this hostile moon, Ahsoka discovered she wasn't alone. A small group of Jedi younglings, including Khalifa, Jinx, and Omer, had survived for months by hiding and evading the hunters. Khalifa had been the oldest, keeping the group together and alive through sheer determination. When Khalifa was killed by a hunter, Ahsoka stepped into the leadership void. Instead of continuing their defensive strategy, she convinced the survivors to take action. Without her lightsaber, without backup, and without communication to the Republic, Ahsoka had to rely purely on her wits and training. She inspired hope in younglings who had all but given up, reminding them that being a Jedi meant more than having a weapon or temple to call home. Their fortunes turned when they encountered a captured Wookiee named Chewbacca. Together, they constructed a transmitter from salvaged parts that contacted the Wookiee's home planet, Kashyyyk. The arrival of Wookiee warriors led by General Tarful provided the firepower they needed to defeat the hunters and escape. When Ahsoka returned to Coruscant and was reunited with Anakin, something had changed. She had survived on her own, led others to safety, and found solutions without relying on her master. The experience marked a significant step in her journey from student to independent Jedi. This newfound confidence was evident when the Jedi Council planned a mission to infiltrate the Citadel, a separatist prison designed specifically to hold Jedi. Master Even Piel had been captured with vital intelligence about secret hyperspace routes, and the Republic needed to extract him before he broke under torture. Despite Anakin explicitly telling her to stay behind, Ahsoka secretly joined the mission, freezing herself in carbonite alongside the clone troopers to avoid detection by lifeform scanners. When she thawed out on the staging area, it was too late to send her back. The Citadel tested every skill Ahsoka had developed. Electrified walls, motion-sensitive blaster turrets, and battalions of battle droids stood between the rescue team and their objective. Using her smaller size to advantage, Ahsoka navigated tight ventilation ducts to disable ray shields blocking their path, proving that sometimes the most valuable team member isn't the strongest, but the most adaptable. The brutal realities of war hit home when Captain Tarkin questioned Jedi tactics, and several clone troopers died horrible deaths during their escape. By the time they extracted Master Piel and the intelligence he carried, Ahsoka had witnessed failures and compromises that no training simulation could replicate. As Ahsoka matured, the Jedi Order began entrusting her with greater responsibilities. In a symbolic passing of the torch, she was assigned to guide a group of younglings to Ilum for the gathering, just as others had once guided her. These younglings, including Petro, Katuni, Bif, Ganodi, Zat, and Gungi, looked to her as the embodiment of what they hoped to become. Their journey back from Ilum aboard the Crucible took an unexpected turn when pirates led by Hondo Ohnaka attacked and captured Ahsoka. The younglings, fresh from finding their Kyber crystals, had to apply their nascent Jedi skills to rescue their mentor. Using creativity and teamwork, they infiltrated Hondo's base on Florum and freed Ahsoka, who watched with pride as her students put their training into action. The experience reinforced a growing realization for Ahsoka. Teaching wasn't just about passing knowledge from master to student. It was a cycle where both parties grew and learned from each other. a truth at the heart of the Jedi tradition that formal lessons often overlooked. Perhaps her most complex mission came on Onderon, where the line between right and wrong blurred in the fog of war. Alongside Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Captain Rex, Ahsoka was sent to train rebels fighting against separatist occupation. When her masters were called away, she remained as the liaison between the rebels and the Republic. This assignment tested more than her combat skills. It challenged her heart. Among the rebels was Lux Bonteri, the son of Separatist Senator Mina Bonteri, whom Ahsoka had met during her diplomatic mission to Raxus. Their reunion sparked feelings that went beyond friendship, testing Ahsoka's commitment to the Jedi Code's restrictions on attachment. She also formed a close bond with Stila Guerrera, the skilled sharpshooter who became leader of the rebel forces. When a battle atop a cliff went wrong, Ahsoka used the Force to save Stila from a fall, only to lose her grip when a droid's laser blast struck her shoulder. Stila plummeted to her death before Ahsoka's eyes. The loss cut deep. Despite all her training and power, Ahsoka couldn't save everyone. She carried this lesson with her, a reminder that war exacts its price even from those with the best intentions and abilities. These larger missions were punctuated by moments of personal danger that tested her resolve. When a deadly blue shadow virus threatened Naboo, Ahsoka and Padme became infected while investigating a secret laboratory. As the virus ravaged her body, Ahsoka continued fighting to contain the outbreak, knowing that if it escaped, millions would die. Even as she struggled to breathe, her focus remained on the mission rather than her own survival. It was only when Anakin and Obi-Wan returned with the cure from Yago that she allowed herself to feel relief. The experience gave her a new appreciation for the fragility of life and the importance of sacrifice for the greater good. Throughout all these trials, a transformation was taking place. The impulsive, sometimes cocky teenager who had arrived on Christophsis was evolving into a thoughtful, capable young woman. She learned to control her emotions without suppressing them, a balance many fully trained Jedi struggled to achieve. Her decisions became more measured, weighing consequences against immediate gains. She developed political awareness beyond most Padawans her age, seeing complexities in situations that others viewed as straightforward. Most importantly, she began developing her own understanding of what it meant to be a Jedi, one shaped by battlefield experience rather than temple teachings. By the third year of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka Tano had lived through more danger and witnessed more suffering than many Jedi experienced in a lifetime. These trials had forged her into something unique, a Jedi whose compassion was informed by reality rather than theory, whose courage was tested by genuine fear, and whose commitment to justice acknowledged the messy compromises of the real world. But the greatest test of her resilience and identity was yet to come, one that would shake her faith in the very institution that had raised her since childhood. Sometimes, the most significant moments in our lives come not from enemies, but from those we trust most. For Ahsoka Tano, the turning point of her journey wasn't on some distant battlefield against separatist forces, but in the heart of the Republic she had sworn to protect. As the Clone Wars stretched into its third year, tension gripped Coruscant. The conflict had gone on longer than anyone anticipated, draining resources and testing the resolve of even the most committed Republic supporters. It was in this climate of fear and exhaustion that disaster struck at the very center of the Jedi Order. Ahsoka and Anakin were far from Coruscant when it happened, engaged in a mission on Cato Nemoidia. An explosion tore through the Jedi Temple hangar, killing 6 Jedi and numerous civilians and clone troopers working there. The attack wasn't just a military strike, it was a statement, a direct challenge to the sanctity of the Jedi Order itself. Called back to investigate, Ahsoka and Anakin work through the wreckage, following the evidence trail to a woman named Letta Termund. What they discovered was horrifying. Termund had fed explosive nanodroids to her husband, a worker at the temple, turning him into an unwitting living bomb. The method was calculated and cruel, designed not just to kill, but to spread fear. With Termund imprisoned under Republic guard, it seemed the case was closed, but in reality, it was just beginning. When Ahsoka visited the prison to speak with Termund, the prisoner asked to speak with her alone. Security footage later showed Termund clutching her throat as if being force-choked, while Ahsoka stood nearby, apparently gesturing with her hand. Moments later, Termund was dead, and Clone Commander Fox was placing Ahsoka under arrest. In her cell, Admiral Tarkin presented the footage, his tone making it clear he considered her guilt a foregone conclusion. Ahsoka protested her innocence, but the evidence against her seemed overwhelming. That night, a mysterious key card slid under her cell door. Was it a way out or another part of the trap? With few options, Ahsoka used it to escape, only to find a trail of dead clone troopers leading away from her cell. Worse still, her lightsabers had been placed at the scene, further implicating her in the killings she hadn't committed. Now a fugitive, Ahsoka found herself in an impossible situation. The Jedi, the clones, the Republic authorities all believed her guilty. Every security camera was looking for her. Every clone trooper had her description, and the lower levels of Coruscant were swarming with patrols hunting her down. Even Captain Rex, who had fought alongside her for years, was among those tasked with bringing her in. Though his orders were to capture her alive, the tension of the moment and the evidence against her tested even his faith in his commander. With nowhere else to turn, Ahsoka contacted the one person she thought she could trust, her fellow Padawan and friend Barriss Offee. Barriss suggested Ahsoka investigate a warehouse in the industrial sector where the nanodroids used in the bombing might have been stored. It could be the key to proving her innocence. The tip led Ahsoka into another trap. At the warehouse, she was attacked and knocked unconscious. When she came to, she found herself surrounded by crates of the same nanodroids used in the bombing, just as Commander Wolffe and his troops burst in. The frame was complete, and Ahsoka was recaptured. What followed was something unprecedented in the history of the Jedi Order. The Council, the very masters who had guided Ahsoka since childhood, voted to expel her from the Jedi Order and surrender her to Republic authorities for trial. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi argued against this decision, but he was outvoted. The council that had taught Ahsoka about justice and fairness now abandoned those principles when one of their own needed them most. In the military tribunal that followed, Admiral Tarkin served as prosecutor, painting Ahsoka as a traitor who had used her Jedi abilities to commit murder. Only Senator Padme Amidala stood in her defense, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial and the rush to judgment unworthy of Republic values. As Tarkin called for the death penalty, the trial was dramatically interrupted. Anakin Skywalker burst into the courtroom with Republic guards and a prisoner, Barriss Offee. Through his own investigation, Anakin had uncovered the truth. It was Barriss who had masterminded the bombing, who had killed Letta Termund using the Force from outside her cell, who had framed Ahsoka every step of the way. When confronted, Barriss confessed not with shame, but with defiance. She had come to believe the Jedi Order had lost its way, becoming a military arm of a corrupt republic rather than peacekeepers. The bombing was her protest against what she saw as the Jedi's betrayal of their own principles, their transformation into the very thing they claimed to fight against. For Ahsoka, the revelation was devastating. The person who had framed her wasn't an enemy but a friend, someone who had fought alongside her, who understood her. Barriss's betrayal cut deeper than any lightsaber could. With the true culprit exposed, Ahsoka was cleared of all charges. The Jedi Council, recognizing their error, invited her back into the Order. Master Yoda suggested that the ordeal had been her great trial, proving her worthy of becoming a Jedi Knight rather than a Padawan. Standing in the council chamber, surrounded by the masters who had so recently doubted her, Ahsoka made a decision that shocked everyone present. She refused their offer. The events had shaken her faith not just in the council, but in the entire Jedi system. An order that could so quickly abandon its principles, that could sacrifice one of its own based on circumstantial evidence, was not one she could continue to serve. As she walked away from the temple, Anakin ran after her, desperate to change her mind. Their conversation on the steps of the Jedi Temple would be their last as Master and Padawan. Ahsoka tried to explain that while she appreciated his loyalty, his faith in her when others doubted, this wasn't about him. It was about her need to find her own path, to discover who Ahsoka Tano was, apart from the Jedi Order that had defined her since childhood. In a moment of vulnerability, Anakin admitted he understood the desire to walk away from the Jedi, revealing his own doubts about the path he had chosen. Ahsoka simply replied that she knew, acknowledging the conflicts she had long sensed in her master. Their bond transcended their formal relationship, but it wasn't enough to keep her within an institution that had lost her trust. As Ahsoka walked down the temple steps and into an uncertain future, she left behind more than her position as a Padawan. She left a void in the lives of those who had come to depend on her. Master Yoda, despite his outward composure, was troubled by visions of her dying in the temple halls, a manifestation of his guilt over his role in her departure. Anakin felt her absence most keenly. Already struggling with the weight of being the chosen one, already harboring secret attachments forbidden by the Jedi Code, he now lost the one person who had helped balance his emotional extremes. Without Ahsoka, his frustrations with the Jedi Council intensified. Their treatment of her reinforced his growing belief that the Council cared more about politics than people, more about their image than justice. For the Jedi Order itself, Ahsoka's departure should have been a warning sign, a chance for reflection. A dedicated Padawan had walked away rather than rejoin their ranks, pointing to fundamental problems in their approach. But consumed by the demands of war, they failed to heed the lesson her leaving offered. Ahsoka Tano, once destined to be a Jedi Knight, now walked a different path. She had entered the temple as a child full of hope and left as a young woman shouldering the weight of disillusionment. Yet in choosing her own way forward, she displayed a kind of courage the Jedi teachings hadn't accounted for. The courage to walk away from everything familiar toward an uncertain but authentic future. The galaxy was still at war, the Republic was still in danger, and the dark side still threatened to consume everything. But for Ahsoka, a new chapter was beginning, one defined not by ancient traditions or the expectations of others, but by her own sense of right and wrong, her own understanding of what it truly meant to bring balance to a galaxy in chaos. Walking away from the Jedi Temple was just the beginning of Ahsoka Tano's journey. For the first time since she was a toddler on Shili, she faced a future with no predetermined path, no master guiding her steps, no order defining her purpose. She was simply Ahsoka Tano, a young woman trying to find her place in a galaxy at war. Life on Coruscant without the Jedi's resources wasn't easy. Ahsoka made her way through the massive city planet's industrial district, relying on mechanical skills she'd picked up during the war to earn credits for food and shelter. She kept a low profile, avoiding conversations about her past and staying away from Republic military zones where she might be recognized. Fate has a way of creating new beginnings, often disguised as accidents. When Ahsoka's speeder bike malfunctioned mid-flight, sending her plummeting toward the lower levels, it seemed like just another stroke of bad luck. The crash landing brought her to a small repair shop run by a young woman named Trace Martez. Trace offered to help fix the damaged speeder, showing a natural talent for engineering that impressed even Ahsoka, who had spent years around military mechanics. Their initial wariness gave way to friendship as they worked together on the bike, sharing stories but carefully editing their pasts. When Trace mentioned her dislike of the Jedi, Ahsoka kept her former identity secret, understanding that many citizens of the lower levels had reasons for their resentment. Soon, Ahsoka met Trace's older sister, Rafa, the more business-minded and cynical of the pair. While Trace saw the best in people, Rafa had learned the hard way that trust could be dangerous in the lower levels. She viewed Ahsoka with suspicion, wondering why someone with obvious combat training and education would end up in their shop. Despite Rafa's reservations, Ahsoka became part of their lives, helping with repair jobs and occasionally using her reflexes and fighting skills to defend the sisters from local gangsters demanding protection money. She was careful never to use the Force openly, aware that such displays would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. The fragile stability of this new life was upended when Rafa accepted a dangerous but lucrative job from the Pike Syndicate, one of the galaxy's most powerful crime organizations. The task seemed simple enough: transport a shipment of spice from the mining world of Kessel to the Pike headquarters on Obadiah. Needing a pilot and hoping to keep her sister out of trouble, Trace volunteered their ship, the Silver Angel, with Ahsoka reluctantly joining as extra crew. The job quickly became complicated when they arrived at Kessel. The elegant upper atmosphere mining facilities masked a darker truth below. The spice they were transporting came from slave labor in the lower levels, a fact that disturbed all three women. Ahsoka, who had fought against slavery throughout the Clone Wars, found herself in the uncomfortable position of potentially facilitating it. This moral dilemma came to a head during their journey to Obadiah. When Trace learned the full extent of the Pike's criminal operations, she made an impulsive decision. Despite Rafa's frantic objections, she dumped their entire cargo of spice into hyperspace. It was a principled stand that put all their lives in danger. Arriving at Obadiah with no spice to deliver, they tried to bluff their way out of the situation. Ahsoka even attempted to use a Jedi mind trick on the Pike leader Mog Krim, a risky move that briefly worked before they were discovered and thrown into prison cells. What should have been a simple delivery had become a fight for survival against one of the galaxy's most dangerous criminal syndicates. During their imprisonment, the barriers between Ahsoka and the Martez sisters broke down. Rafa revealed why she and Trace harbored such animosity toward the Jedi. Years earlier, during Cad Bane's infamous prison break with Zero the Hutt, a crashing prison transport threatened to hit a crowded landing platform. The Jedi present used the Force to redirect the ship, saving many lives but causing it to crash into the wall of the portal instead, where the Martez family lived. Their parents were killed instantly. In the aftermath, as the young sisters stood homeless and orphaned, Jedi Master Luminara Unduli had approached them. Rather than offering help or comfort, she simply explained that she had made a choice about the greater good, telling young Rafa that the Force will be with you before walking away, leaving the children to fend for themselves. This story hit Ahsoka hard. She had served alongside Master Unduli, respected her wisdom and combat prowess, yet here was a side of the Jedi she had never considered. How their detachment, their focus on the cosmic force, could appear as callousness to those affected by their decisions. It was another crack in the idealized image of the Jedi that Ahsoka had once believed in completely. Through multiple escape attempts and recaptures, the three women formed a bond forged in danger. When they finally managed to escape the Pike prison for good, they had become something like family to each other, with Ahsoka finding in the Martez sisters something she had lost when she walked away from the Jedi: connection without conditions. But the galaxy wasn't finished with Ahsoka Tano. As they returned to Coruscant, they were approached by a group of Mandalorian warriors led by Bo-Katan, sister of the late Duchess Satine. Bo-Katan explained that Mandalore had fallen under the control of Maul, the former Sith who had killed Duchess Satine and established a puppet government. The Death Watch, once terrorists against Satine's peaceful rule, had splintered. Bo-Katan now led a resistance movement seeking to reclaim Mandalore, and she needed Ahsoka's help, not as a Jedi, but as someone who understood the threat Maul represented to the galaxy. Ahsoka was hesitant. Helping Bo-Katan meant stepping back into the conflict she had walked away from, reconnecting with the Jedi and the Republic military. It meant facing the past she had been trying to redefine. But the threat was too great to ignore, and perhaps this was the purpose she had been searching for since leaving the Order. With a promise to return, Ahsoka left her speeder bike with the Martez sisters and joined Bo-Katan's mission. Together, they contacted the Jedi Council, with Ahsoka speaking directly to Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time since her departure. Though she was no longer a Jedi, she was still a defender of the innocent, and Mandalore needed defending. The timing couldn't have been worse for a major military operation. Chancellor Palpatine had been kidnapped by General Grievous, and both Anakin and Obi-Wan were dispatched to rescue him over Coruscant. But Anakin didn't leave Ahsoka empty-handed. He assigned her a battalion of the 501st Legion, led by Captain Rex, and returned her lightsabers, their crystals now glowing blue instead of green. The siege of Mandalore began with Republic gunships breaking through the planetary defenses, with Ahsoka and Bo-Katan leading the assault on the capital city. Fighting their way into Maul's throne room, Ahsoka finally confronted the former Sith who had caused so much suffering to people she cared about. Their conversation revealed something shocking. Maul claimed he wasn't on Mandalore to fight the Republic, but to lure Skywalker there. He spoke of his former master, Darth Sidious, and a grand plan nearing completion. Most disturbing of all, he claimed Anakin Skywalker had been groomed as Sidious's next apprentice, destined to help the Sith Lord destroy the Jedi and rule the galaxy. Ahsoka refused to believe these claims about her former master. Their duel was spectacular. Lightsabers clashing through the throne room and onto the support beams of the dome above the city. Using the Force and her dual-wielding technique, Ahsoka managed to defeat Maul, capturing him alive to stand trial for his crimes. With Maul in custody, Ahsoka and Rex prepared to transport him to Coruscant. But aboard their Star Destroyer, everything changed in an instant. Darth Sidious, now revealed as Chancellor Palpatine, issued Order 66, activating hidden programming in the clone troopers' inhibitor chips that compelled them to turn on the Jedi. Rex, fighting against his own programming, managed to tell Ahsoka to find fives before his mind was overridden. The reference to the clone trooper who had discovered the conspiracy gave Ahsoka the key to understanding what was happening. Using the ship's database, she learned about inhibitor chips implanted in all clones, and with the help of astromech droids, managed to capture Rex and surgically remove his chip. With Rex freed from the control, but the rest of the clones hunting them, they made a desperate decision. They released Maul as a diversion, allowing him to cut through clone forces while they made their way to a shuttle. As they escaped, the damaged Star Destroyer crashed onto a nearby moon, killing most of those aboard. In the aftermath, Ahsoka stood before makeshift graves marked with clone trooper helmets, honoring the men who had been her comrades. In a symbolic gesture, she dropped one of her lightsabers into the snow, creating the impression that she too had perished in the crash. It was both a memorial and a deception, allowing the galaxy to believe Ahsoka Tano had died with the Republic she once served. She and Rex parted ways, each heading into an uncertain future in a galaxy transformed overnight. The Republic was gone, replaced by the Galactic Empire. The Jedi Order was destroyed, its members hunted down as traitors. And somewhere out there, something terrible had happened to Anakin Skywalker, something that made Maul's warnings seem less like the ravings of a fallen Sith and more like a terrible prophecy fulfilled. As Ahsoka disappeared into the vastness of space, she carried with her a final transmission from Obi-Wan Kenobi, warning any surviving Jedi to stay away from the temple and go into hiding. She was not a Jedi, but she understood now better than ever the darkness they had all been fighting against. Palpatine, Darth Sidious, had orchestrated everything from the beginning, and now his empire reigned supreme. The galaxy had changed, and so had Ahsoka Tano. Once a Jedi Padawan full of certainty, she was now something else entirely. A survivor, moving silently through a dangerous new era, carrying the knowledge and skills of a vanished order. Her path forward would be one of her own making, in a galaxy where the light of the Jedi had been all but extinguished. The fall of the Republic and rise of the Empire changed everything. Overnight, being a former Jedi went from complicated to deadly. With Order 66 transforming clone troopers into Jedi hunters and Palpatine's propaganda machine painting the Jedi as traitors, Ahsoka Tano faced a galaxy where her very existence was a crime. Her first instinct was to run, to put as much distance as possible between herself and the core worlds, where Imperial control was strongest. The outer rim offered anonymity among its countless backwater planets where the Empire's reach was still limited. Tabeska, a dusty world controlled by various criminal factions, became her first refuge. Adopting the name Ashla, a nod to ancient Force traditions, she found work as a mechanic with the Fardi clan. This influential family maintained legitimate shipping businesses as a cover for their smuggling operations, making them powerful enough to offer protection and secretive enough not to ask too many questions about a newcomer with obvious skills. The mechanical knowledge Ahsoka had gained during the Clone Wars proved valuable, allowing her to maintain a low profile while earning enough to survive. She worked on everything from speeders to freighters, keeping her head down and her past hidden. But old habits die hard. Even while hiding, she found herself watching for signs of other Force users, particularly children who might be in danger from the Empire's hunters. Her vigilance paid off when she noticed something special about the youngest Fardi daughter, Hedala. The child showed unmistakable signs of Force sensitivity, unconsciously using her abilities in small ways. In the Old Republic, such a discovery would have meant notifying the Jedi Order. Now, it meant danger. The Empire was actively hunting Force-sensitive children, either eliminating them or twisting them to serve the dark side. Ahsoka discreetly watched over Hedala, never revealing her own abilities or explaining why she took an interest in the girl. But as Imperial presence on Tabeska increased, with stormtroopers conducting random searches and intelligence officers asking questions about strangers, Ahsoka realized her presence put everyone at risk. When a Star Destroyer arrived in orbit, she made the painful decision to flee, leaving Hedala behind with the hope that the Fardi clan's influence would protect her from Imperial notice. Her next sanctuary was Rada, a small agricultural moon far from major hyperspace routes. Its simple farming communities offered the perfect cover for someone looking to disappear. Settling into life as a mechanic once again, Ahsoka established a small shop repairing farming equipment. The locals initially viewed her with suspicion, as outsiders were rare on Rada, but her technical skills and willingness to work for fair prices gradually earned their acceptance. Among her new acquaintances were the Latte sisters, Kaden and Miara. Kaden, close to Ahsoka in age, became particularly friendly, often bringing damaged equipment to fix just to have an excuse to talk. Their growing friendship gave Ahsoka something she had missed since leaving the Jedi and parting ways with the Martez sisters: normal human connection without the weight of war behind it. This peaceful existence shattered when Imperial forces arrived on Rada. Their purpose wasn't conquest or peacekeeping, but exploitation. The Empire required the farmers to plant new crops, ones that would yield high returns for Imperial resources, but would also leach nutrients from the soil, ultimately rendering the moon barren. The message was clear. The Empire cared about short-term gains, not the long-term survival of the people or their world. Rather than fleeing again, Ahsoka chose to act. Drawing on her military experience, she began organizing a resistance among the farmers. Her strategy was simple but effective. Slow down work without obvious sabotage, stockpile food for the coming hardship, and prepare to fight back when the moment was right. She conducted makeshift combat training sessions at night, teaching the farmers basic self-defense and how to use the limited weapons they had. Kaden and other locals followed her lead, impressed by her tactical knowledge and natural leadership. But Ahsoka continued to hide her Force abilities, aware that revealing her true nature would bring even more Imperial attention to Rada. She hoped to stay beneath their notice while building the resistance into something capable of defending the moon. Her caution proved warranted when the Empire dispatched an inquisitor to Rada. Known only as the Sixth Brother, this dark side user belonged to an elite unit created specifically to hunt down surviving Jedi and Force-sensitive children. Sensing unusual resistance activity, he suspected a Jedi might be involved and set his trap. The Inquisitor attacked the farmers' insurgent group, killing several and capturing Kaden, using her as bait to draw out whoever was organizing the resistance. When Ahsoka learned of her friend's capture, she faced an impossible choice: reveal herself and risk bringing the full might of the Empire down on Rada, or abandon Kaden to torture and death. She chose to return, but on her own terms. Confronting the Sixth Brother directly, Ahsoka finally unleashed the Force abilities she had kept hidden since Order 66. The duel that followed demonstrated how much she had grown since her Padawan days. Where once she might have attacked directly, now she fought with patience and strategy, analyzing the Inquisitor's fighting style and finding its flaws. The Sixth Brother relied on a double-bladed rotating lightsaber, a weapon designed to intimidate as much as to kill. Rather than trying to overpower him, Ahsoka used the Force to target a weakness in the lightsaber's design, causing the central mechanism to overload. The resulting explosion killed the Inquisitor and left his weapon in pieces. From the wreckage, Ahsoka retrieved the kyber crystals that powered the red blades. These crystals, once attuned to the light side of the Force, had been corrupted and made to bleed into their crimson color. Through deep meditation, she purified these crystals, cleansing them of the dark side energy that had tainted them. When she finished, the crystals glowed a pure white, neither Jedi blue nor green, but something new, reflecting her own path outside traditional Jedi ideology. With these white crystals, she constructed new lightsabers, completing her transformation from Jedi Padawan to independent Force user. Her new weapons symbolized her unique status, trained in Jedi ways, but no longer bound by their restrictions. Experienced in war, but committed to a more personal fight for justice. After rescuing Kaden and evacuating the farmers before Imperial reinforcements arrived, Ahsoka found herself at another crossroads. She had managed to save lives on Rada, but the experience proved she couldn't hide forever. The Empire was expanding rapidly, and soon nowhere in the galaxy would be truly safe for someone with her abilities. It was at this pivotal moment that Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan entered her life. Having secretly opposed Palpatine's power grab and the formation of the Empire, Organa was quietly gathering allies for what would eventually become the Rebel Alliance. He had tracked rumors of a former Jedi fighting the Empire on Rada and correctly identified Ahsoka from reports of her distinctive fighting style. Their initial meeting was cautious on both sides. Ahsoka had grown wary of politicians after seeing how corruption in the Senate had contributed to the Republic's fall. Organa, meanwhile, needed to be certain she wasn't an Imperial trap. But their shared values and memories of the Republic at its best created common ground. Organa offered Ahsoka a position as commander in his nascent rebellion, much like her role during the Clone Wars. She declined, the wounds from her military service and separation from the Jedi Order still fresh. But she proposed an alternative. She would serve as a coordinator, facilitating communication between the scattered rebel cells that were emerging across the galaxy. In exchange, she asked Organa to help her locate and protect Force-sensitive children from the Empire's Inquisitors. Thus was born Fulcrum, a code name that allowed Ahsoka to operate in the shadows, providing intelligence and guidance to resistance groups while maintaining her anonymity. She established secure communication protocols and dead drops, created spy networks on Imperial-controlled worlds, and became the invisible thread connecting isolated rebel operations into something larger. One of the rebel cells she guided was the crew of the Ghost, operating primarily around Lothal. Led by Hera Syndulla, daughter of Ryloth freedom fighter Cham Syndulla, this tight-knit group included a surprising member, Kanan Jarrus, a Jedi Padawan who had survived Order 66 and lived in hiding until circumstances forced him to reignite his lightsaber. Ahsoka maintained strict operational security, communicating only with Hera and using a voice modifier to keep her identity secret. But when Kanan was captured by the Empire, the stakes became too high for anonymity. Ahsoka arrived in person with a rebel fleet to assist in the rescue operation, finally revealing herself to the Ghost crew. For Kanan and his Padawan Ezra Bridger, meeting a Jedi who had trained under Anakin Skywalker and served on the Jedi Council was momentous. Though Ahsoka gently corrected them, explaining she was no longer a Jedi, she took on a mentorship role for these survivors of a destroyed order. She helped Kanan work through his doubts about training Ezra, understanding his fear of inadequacy all too well. To Ezra, she offered wisdom about the Force that went beyond traditional Jedi teachings. When the young Padawan became too dependent on his lightsaber, Ahsoka reminded him that a Jedi's true power comes from the Force and their connection to all living things, not from weapons or demonstrations of power. Her experiences with threatened Force-sensitive children also led her to help the Ghost crew protect younglings from the Inquisitors. The parallels to her own childhood were impossible to ignore, reminding her of a time when a Sith Lord had attempted a similar scheme during the Clone Wars, collecting Force-sensitive children for dark purposes. Perhaps the most significant moment in this chapter of Ahsoka's life came when she directed the Ghost crew to find her old friend Captain Rex. The veteran clone trooper was hiding on Selos with Commanders Wolf and Gregor, fellow clones who had removed their inhibitor chips before Order 66. Their reunion was emotional, with Ahsoka teasingly commenting that Rex had gotten old, to which he replied that it had to happen sometime. Bringing Rex into the rebellion connected Ahsoka's past with her present, closing a circle that had begun on Christophsis years earlier. Together again, they represented something remarkable. Survivors who had seen the Republic fall and the Empire rise, yet still fought for the freedom they once protected. Their bond, forged in the Clone Wars and tested by Order 66, became a foundation for the growing rebellion against Imperial tyranny. As Fulcrum, as a mentor, as a friend, Ahsoka Tano had found a new purpose. No longer defined by the Jedi Order or military rank, she became something unique in the galaxy, a beacon of hope operating in the shadows, guided by her own moral compass rather than ancient codes or military orders. In a time of darkness, she carried the light in her own way, on her own terms. Some wounds never fully heal. For Ahsoka Tano, the question of what happened to Anakin Skywalker after she left the Jedi Order haunted her thoughts during the dark years of Imperial rule. As reports of Darth Vader's brutality spread across the galaxy, she had no reason to connect this Sith enforcer to her former master. That changed during a mission with the crew of the Ghost. The rebel fleet had gathered for a rare meeting when a lone TIE advanced fighter appeared, piloted with extraordinary skill. The pilot's force presence radiated cold fury, a darkness unlike anything most of the rebels had ever encountered. But to Ahsoka, there was something disturbingly familiar beneath the darkness. As Vader tore through the rebel ships, Ahsoka and Kanan Jarrus reached out through the Force, attempting to identify this powerful enemy. The moment their minds touched Vader's presence, the truth hit Ahsoka like a physical blow. She collapsed, overwhelmed by the realization that the dark figure cutting through their defenses was Anakin Skywalker, twisted and consumed by the dark side. The connection went both ways. Vader sensed her too, discovering that his former Padawan had survived Order 66. For both, it was a moment of shock that rippled through the Force, connecting master and apprentice across the void of years and choices that had separated them. When Ahsoka regained consciousness, she was shaken to her core. Ezra Bridger, sensing her distress, asked directly if she knew who Vader was. She claimed ignorance, unwilling or unable to voice the terrible truth. How could she explain that the man who had taught her everything, who had fought alongside her to protect the innocent, had become this instrument of terror? The revelation tormented her, making her question everything about her past. Had there been signs she missed? Could she have prevented Anakin's fall if she had stayed with the Jedi? The kind, brave master she remembered seemed impossibly distant from the merciless Sith Lord Vader had become. This internal struggle consumed her thoughts, driving her to seek answers. An opportunity to confront these questions arose when she accompanied Kanan and Ezra to the Jedi Temple on Lothal. These hidden temples had once served as sanctuaries and places of learning for the Jedi Order. Now, with the Jedi nearly extinct, they were among the last repositories of light-side knowledge in the galaxy. Inside the temple, while Kanan and Ezra faced their own trials, Ahsoka encountered something she wasn't prepared for, a vision of Anakin Skywalker. This apparition appeared as she remembered him, a powerful Jedi in his prime, but his words cut deeper than any lightsaber. He accused her of abandoning him, asking if she knew what he had become because of her absence. Before her eyes, the vision transformed, Anakin's features twisting and darkening until Darth Vader stood before her. The truth could no longer be denied. She lashed out with her lightsaber, a futile attempt to strike down the truth rather than accept it. Her cry of anguish echoed through the temple as she finally accepted what she had sensed during the fleet battle. Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader were one and the same. Following this vision, Ahsoka learned that Master Yoda had directed Ezra to seek knowledge on Malachor, a planet steeped in dark side energy and forbidden to Jedi for thousands of years. Despite the danger, she joined Kanan and Ezra on this quest, explaining that they needed to understand their enemy if they hoped to defeat the Sith. Malachor's surface was a wasteland of petrified figures, the remains of an ancient battle between Jedi and Sith. Beneath this grim monument lay a massive Sith temple containing a weapon of unimaginable power. As they explored, they encountered Imperial Inquisitors hunting for the same knowledge, forcing them into combat in the shadow of history. During this confrontation, they gained an unexpected ally, Maul, the former Sith Lord who had once ruled Mandalore. Claiming to be stranded on Malachor and presenting himself as an enemy of the Empire, Maul offered to help them navigate the temple. Ahsoka was immediately suspicious, remembering their previous encounters during the Clone Wars and the Siege of Mandalore. But with Inquisitors closing in, they had little choice but to accept his assistance. Maul's knowledge of Sith lore proved valuable as they delved deeper into the temple. He explained that the structure housed a holocron containing knowledge that could destroy the Sith, but his helpfulness masked his true intentions. After they retrieved the holocron, Maul revealed his plan to use Ezra as his new apprentice and the holocron to power an ancient weapon. When Kanan opposed him, Maul struck without warning, blinding the Jedi with a slash of his lightsaber. Ahsoka rushed to Kanan's aid as Maul escaped with Ezra toward the top of the temple. She wanted to pursue but couldn't leave the injured Kanan. Her moment of compassion allowed Maul to reach the temple apex, where an even greater threat awaited. Darth Vader had arrived on Malachor, drawn by the power of the temple and perhaps by the presence of his former Padawan. He confronted Ezra, easily overpowering the young Jedi and preparing to strike a killing blow. It was at this crucial moment that Ahsoka arrived, drawing Vader's attention away from Ezra and toward herself. Their confrontation began with words rather than lightsabers. Vader demanded information about any surviving Jedi, but Ahsoka was focused on one burning question. She accused him directly of killing Anakin Skywalker, still struggling to fully accept that her master and this dark figure were the same person. Vader's response was chilling in its simplicity. Anakin Skywalker was weak, he said, and he had destroyed him. The finality of these words ignited something in Ahsoka. If Vader claimed to have killed Anakin, then she would avenge her master. She ignited her twin white lightsabers and attacked, committing fully to the battle. What followed was more than a lightsaber duel. It was the collision of past and present, of what was and what could have been. Ahsoka's acrobatic fighting style, honed through years of combat, contrasted with Vader's relentless power. They fought across the temple top as energy gathered for the weapon's activation, each strike illuminated by the growing light of dark side energy. Despite everything she had faced, Ahsoka had never encountered an opponent like Vader. His strength in the Force was overwhelming, his technique ruthless and efficient. But she had grown far beyond the Padawan he had known. Her twin lightsabers flashed in perfect coordination, finding openings in his guard that few opponents ever discovered. In a pivotal moment, Ahsoka connected with a slash that cut through part of Vader's mask, revealing the scarred face beneath. For the first time, she saw physical confirmation of the truth her heart had been denying. Behind the mask was Anakin Skywalker, his features twisted by pain and the dark side, but unmistakably him. Their combat paused as they locked eyes. Ahsoka, her voice softening with emotion, called him by his true name, Anakin. She vowed not to leave him again, a promise that echoed their last meeting at the Jedi Temple years before. For a brief moment, something flickered in Vader's exposed eye, a recognition or memory of who he had once been. But the moment passed. Vader's response was cold and final. She would die. Whatever remained of Anakin Skywalker was buried too deep beneath Darth Vader's darkness. The battle resumed with even greater intensity as the temple began to collapse around them, the weapon's energy destabilizing the ancient structure. As Ezra and Kanan escaped on their ship, they caught a final glimpse of Ahsoka and Vader still locked in combat amid the temple's destruction. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit, a pillar of energy that seemed to consume both combatants. To all who witnessed it, Ahsoka Tano had fallen in battle against the Empire's darkest enforcer. The Ghost Crew mourned her loss, adding her name to the growing list of rebels who had sacrificed everything in the fight against the Empire. Ezra, in particular, was haunted by leaving her behind, wondering if he could have done something to save her. Kanan, adjusting to his blindness, sensed that there was more to her fate than they knew, but even his connection to the Force couldn't tell him if she had survived. Vader emerged from the ruins of Malachor wounded but alive, his encounter with his former Padawan leaving physical and possibly emotional scars. Whatever thoughts passed through his mind about Ahsoka Tano, he kept them hidden behind his reconstructed mask as he returned to his master's service. The confrontation on Malachor represented more than just a battle between former master and apprentice. It was the collision of two paths that had once run parallel before diverging dramatically. Ahsoka had left the Jedi, but remained true to their highest ideals of compassion and justice. Anakin had stayed with the Order only to betray everything it stood for, falling into darkness so complete it consumed his former self. Their duel left questions unanswered and wounds unhealed. What remained of Anakin within Vader? Could he ever find redemption? And what had truly happened to Ahsoka Tano in those final moments as the temple collapsed around them? The answers lay shrouded in mystery, much like the Force itself, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Death comes for everyone eventually. At least, that's how it's supposed to work. But Ahsoka Tano's story defied that fundamental rule in a way that stretches our understanding of the Force itself. As the Sith temple on Malachor collapsed around her and Vader, it seemed certain that her journey had reached its end. Even Vader himself believed she had perished in the temple's destruction. But the Force had other plans. At the moment Vader was about to deliver a killing strike, something impossible happened. A glowing circular portal appeared behind Ahsoka, and a hand reached through, pulling her backward into a blinding light, just as Vader's lightsaber slashed through empty air. The Sith Lord fell through the collapsing floor, while Ahsoka vanished from that point in time altogether. She emerged disoriented in a place unlike any she had ever seen. A vast, endless darkness stretched in all directions, intersected by glowing white pathways. Doorways of light hung in the void, each showing different moments across time and space. Voices echoed from the past and future, fragments of conversations spanning the history of the galaxy. This was the world between worlds, a realm existing outside normal time and space, connecting all moments through the mystical energy of the Force. More shocking than her surroundings was her rescuer, Ezra Bridger, noticeably older than when she had last seen him minutes before. This Ezra explained that he had discovered an entrance to this realm through a Jedi temple on Lothal, 2 years after the events on Malachor. Through the Force, he had reached back through time to save her from certain death. As they walked the luminous paths, Ezra revealed what had happened during her absence. The rebellion had grown stronger, but they had also suffered losses. Most painful was the death of Kanan Jarrus, who had sacrificed himself to save Hera Syndulla and their mission. Seeing another portal showing Kanan's final moments, Ezra was tempted to reach through and save his master, just as he had saved Ahsoka. It was Ahsoka who stopped him, despite understanding his pain better than anyone. She explained that altering Kanan's sacrifice would have changed everything that followed, likely leading to their deaths and many others. Some moments, however painful, must remain as they are. This wisdom came from her own experience of letting go, both of Anakin and of her expectations for what her life should have been. Their reunion in this mystical plane was cut short by a new threat. Emperor Palpatine had sensed their presence in the world between worlds and sought entry himself. Through one of the portals, fiery blue energy reached toward them, the Emperor attempting to use Sith alchemy to breach the boundaries between realms. Ahsoka used the Force to block this energy while she and Ezra fled. As they ran along the pathways, they became separated. Before the connection between them broke, they promised to find each other again someday. Ahsoka entered a portal that returned her to Malachor, but at a different time than she had left, appearing near the base of the now-destroyed Sith temple. A convoy named Morai, which had appeared to her several times before, accompanied her return to the physical world. Back on Malachor, Ahsoka began a journey of spiritual discovery. Following Morai deeper into the temple ruins, she found another connection to the world between worlds. This experience, touching the very fabric of time and existence, fundamentally changed her understanding of the Force and her place in the galaxy. While the details of this spiritual awakening remain mysterious, its impact on her was clear in the years that followed. Meanwhile, Darth Vader emerged from the ruins of Malachor, believing his former Padawan had died in their confrontation. With Ahsoka's supposed death, the Emperor declared the Great Jedi Purge complete, though in truth, several Force users still survived in hiding across the galaxy. Years passed. The rebellion against the Empire grew into the Alliance to restore the Republic. Ezra Bridger disappeared during the liberation of Lothal, sacrificing himself to remove the threat of Grand Admiral Thrawn by pulling the Imperial ship into hyperspace toward unknown space. The Death Star was destroyed over Yavin. The Empire struck back at Hoth, and eventually, the second Death Star exploded over Endor, taking Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader with it. 5 years after the Battle of Endor, with the new Republic established but still securing its place in the galaxy, Ahsoka Tano emerged from her period of seclusion. She approached Sabine Wren, the Mandalorian artist and warrior who had been part of the Ghost Crew, with a mission to find Ezra Bridger. Their search took them into the unknown regions, vast unexplored areas of space beyond the galactic frontier. During this time, Ahsoka began training Sabine in the ways of the Force. Though Sabine lacked natural Force sensitivity, Ahsoka believed determination and discipline could compensate, at least enough to teach her certain skills. This unusual master-student relationship didn't always go smoothly. They eventually parted ways on bad terms, with Sabine claiming Ahsoka had given up on both her training and the search for Ezra. The truth was more complicated, involving leads Ahsoka needed to pursue alone and lessons Sabine wasn't yet ready to learn. By 9 ABY, rumors reached Ahsoka that Grand Admiral Thrawn, long thought lost with Ezra, had somehow returned. If Thrawn was back, there might be hope for finding Ezra as well. Following these whispers led her to Corvus, a planet suffering under the rule of Morgan Elsbeth, a servant of Thrawn who had constructed much of the Imperial fleet. Ahsoka besieged the city of Calodan, using guerrilla tactics to pressure Elsbeth into revealing Thrawn's location. It was during this campaign that fate brought her an unexpected visitor, Din Djarin, a Mandalorian bounty hunter carrying precious cargo. Djarin had been directed to Ahsoka by Bo-Katan Kryze, who was gathering Mandalorians to reclaim their homeworld. He sought help for the child in his care, a Force-sensitive infant of the same species as the legendary Jedi Master Yoda. Through the Force, Ahsoka communicated with the child, learning his name was Grogu, and that he had been trained at the Jedi Temple before being hidden during the Purge. Despite Djarin's request, Ahsoka refused to train Grogu. She saw in him a strong attachment to Djarin, a bond that reminded her too much of Anakin's attachments and how they had contributed to his fall. Rather than risk another powerful Force user turning to the dark side, she directed them to Tython, where an ancient Jedi Seeing Stone would allow Grogu to choose his own path forward. This decision reflected how deeply her experiences had changed her. Once a dedicated Jedi Padawan, Ahsoka now walked a different path, neither Jedi nor Sith, but something uniquely her own. Her journey from the temple on Shili to the world between worlds had taught her that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from stepping back and allowing others to find their own way, just as she had found hers. Few individuals in galactic history have witnessed as much change as Ahsoka Tano. From the twilight of the Republic through the darkness of the Empire and into the dawn of the New Republic, her journey spanned eras that reshaped the fabric of the galaxy. As she continued her path after the fall of the Empire, her story intertwined with a new generation of heroes, including the son of her former master. After Emperor Palpatine's defeat at Endor, Luke Skywalker began rebuilding the Jedi Order, establishing a training temple on Ossus. During this period, Ahsoka visited the young Jedi Master, creating a connection that bridged past and present. Though they had never met during the reign of the Empire, their conversation carried the weight of shared history. Luke was training Grogu, the Force-sensitive child Ahsoka had encountered on Corvus, who had chosen to follow the Jedi path after his time on Tython. When Din Djarin arrived at the temple with a gift of Mandalorian chainmail for Grogu, Ahsoka served as mediator between the Mandalorian and the Jedi. Understanding the importance of Grogu's training, but also recognizing the bond between the child and Djarin, she offered to deliver the gift herself, preventing disruption to Grogu's lessons. During her time at the temple, she observed qualities in Luke that reminded her of Anakin, the good man she had known before his fall. She counseled the young Skywalker to trust his instincts regarding Grogu's training, advice shaped by her own experiences with the rigid Jedi Code and its limitations. Though she valued these new connections, Ahsoka never lost sight of her mission to find Ezra Bridger. Her search took her to ancient temples across the galaxy, seeking clues in forgotten places where the barriers between worlds might be thinner. She believed that understanding the nature of Ezra and Thrawn's disappearance was key to finding them, leading her to investigate mystical artifacts and star maps from long-lost civilizations. This quest brought her back to Morgan Elsbeth, whom she had encountered on Corvus. Through interrogation, Ahsoka discovered references to a distant galaxy called Peridea, where Thrawn might have taken refuge after his disappearance with Ezra. Following this lead, she journeyed to Arcana, an ancient stronghold of the Night Sisters of Dathomir. There, she retrieved a golden orb that functioned as a map, potentially showing the way to this unknown galaxy. With this precious artifact in hand, Ahsoka sought out someone who could help decipher it, Sabine Wren. Despite their previous falling out, Sabine's unique combination of Mandalorian training, technical expertise, and connection to Ezra made her the perfect partner for this mission. Ahsoka traveled to Lothal, where Sabine had remained to protect Ezra's homeworld in his absence. Their reunion was far from smooth. Years of separation had created distance between them, with both women harboring resentment over their parting. Sabine blamed Ahsoka for giving up on both her training and the search for Ezra, while Ahsoka was frustrated by Sabine's impulsiveness and refusal to complete her lessons. Despite this tension, their shared goal of finding Ezra created common ground. The situation complicated when Sabine, acting against Ahsoka's instructions, took the map and activated it prematurely. This rash action drew the attention of Imperial remnant forces led by Baylan Skoll and his apprentice Shin Hati, former Jedi, who had turned to the dark side after the fall of the Order. In the ensuing confrontation, Sabine was wounded, and the Imperial agents stole the map, setting back their quest significantly. Undeterred, Ahsoka gathered allies to continue the pursuit. New Republic General Hera Syndulla, the former pilot of the Ghost and now a high-ranking military officer, joined forces with her. Their investigation led them to Corellia, where they discovered Imperial sympathizers extracting a massive hyperdrive core from a salvaged superstar destroyer. This operation, they learned, was part of a plan to bring Thrawn back from exile in Peridea. During their mission on Corellia, Ahsoka faced Marok, a mysterious figure with ties to the Imperial Inquisitorius. Their duel showcased her continued mastery of lightsaber combat, her twin white blades moving with a precision and grace that had become her trademark. Even decades after her Jedi training, few could match her skill with a lightsaber or her connection to the Force. Despite their rocky start, Ahsoka resumed Sabine's training, recognizing potential in the young Mandalorian that went beyond conventional Force sensitivity. Though Sabine lacked the natural abilities most Padawans possessed, Ahsoka maintained that determination and discipline were equally important aspects of mastering the Force. She encouraged Sabine to start small, moving objects like stones before attempting more complex techniques. This unconventional master-student relationship reflected Ahsoka's unique path, neither fully Jedi nor entirely separate from their traditions. Their training sessions were cut short when Morgan Elsbeth's forces attacked, pursuing the map to Thrawn. The subsequent battle forced them to focus on their mission rather than training, though the experience helped solidify their renewed partnership. The full extent of Ahsoka's journey remains shrouded in mystery. What we do know comes from fragments of information preserved in galactic records. During the Battle of Exegol in 35 ABY, when Rey faced a resurrected Emperor Palpatine, she heard the voices of Jedi past encouraging her. Among those voices was Ahsoka Tano, who told Rey to let the Force guide her as it guided us. This suggests that by this time Ahsoka had become one with the Force, joining the chorus of Jedi who had passed beyond the physical realm. Her story was deemed significant enough to be recorded in the Journal of the Wills, the ancient text that chronicled the most important events and individuals in galactic history. Luke Skywalker also preserved her story in his personal journals during his exile on Ahch-To, ensuring that future generations would know of the Togruta warrior who walked her own path. What made Ahsoka's legacy so enduring wasn't just her skill in battle or her connection to pivotal historical events. It was her ability to forge her own way in a galaxy that demanded conformity. She left the Jedi Order not because she rejected its values, but because she understood that those values could exist outside rigid institutional structures. She fought the Empire not as a Jedi or a soldier, but as an individual committed to freedom and justice. From the young Padawan who arrived on Christophsis eager to prove herself, to the wise warrior who helped guide a new generation after the Empire's fall, Ahsoka Tano's journey embodied resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. She survived the Clone Wars, Order 66, the reign of the Empire, and encounters with Sith Lords. More importantly, she maintained her compassion and commitment to helping others through it all. The galaxy will remember many heroes from this turbulent era. Luke Skywalker, who rebuilt the Jedi Order, Leia Organa, who led the rebellion and helped establish the New Republic, Han Solo, whose courage turned the tide of crucial battles. But alongside these famous names, the story of Ahsoka Tano will endure as a testament to finding one's own path through the stars, guided not by tradition or expectation, but by an unwavering moral compass and the living force that connects all things.